Okay, so we are live with our panel discussion to close us out. I will now pass over to Tim deBoer, and he will moderate this panel. Thank you, Tim.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for with us. You've made it to the last session, and as you know, it's a panel to 4 panels today, and moderating. My name is Tim deBoer. I'm from Red Hat, and our panelists today. Sorry, just making sure I get names and companies right. I do know these guys. So we have Marc from Ericsson. You want to wave, Marc? Jonas from EclipseSource. Miro from TypeFox. There we go. And Matthew, also from Ericsson. Okay, and all of these guys are involved in the Theia ecosystem. They all do happen to be part of the Eclipse Cloud Dev Tools Working Group. Or sorry, Marc is not. Most of you guys are. And apparently Ericsson has the run for green backgrounds. I don't know, did they send those out through the whole company, or we just happen to?
No. Marc and I are a fan of green technology in general.
Okay. So let's get the panel discussion started. Let's start with looking back at the past year. What's happened in the last year that was interesting or exciting about the project? And I don't know what order to go in, so we're just going to go with who's on my my screen. Jonas.
First of all, it was very exciting for me to become a Thea co-lead in the beginning of this year, and since then working on the project together with Marc and Jonas. From a technical point of view, there are many things, but I don't want to go too much back in time. The thing that we're currently working on to publish is a CDT.cloud blueprint, like a C++ blueprint based on Thea, and I think I'm very excited about that currently. So I'm currently, I can reveal that here maybe. We are currently working even on a project proposal for that.
Okay, excellent. Matthew?
Well, I think that the segue is excellent. One thing that I'm personally really excited about is Blueprint in general, Theia Blueprint. So I have this issue that, like, we have theiaide.org, and then people go there and they say, wait, this isn't an IDE. And we have now a Hello World program that works really well, I find, and like I use it. And it just makes things a lot easier, and it makes it a lot easier to explain why this whole project and ecosystem is so great. It's a programmer's documentation almost.
Yeah. Okay. And Miro?
Yeah, for me it was OpenVSX. It was really great to see that project gaining adoption after we had been spending a lot of effort into that in the year before. So we've seen both the number of extension developers publishing to it becoming more and more, and also the number of applications building on it and using it to get extensions. And yeah, for me personally, also finishing the crossover period for transferring the public open-vsx.org service from TypeFox to Eclipse Foundation, that was finished in January this year. So that was a great milestone for us.
Okay, and Marc?
Yes, I totally agree about OpenVSX. It's a great component to have, and not only useful for Thea, but for a greater ecosystem as well of the VS Codium and all kind of VS Code forks. And I was going to say Blueprint as well. It is a very nice effort where several companies came together. I think at the beginning it was mostly done by ARM, but then you had the people from EclipseSource, from Ericsson, and others come join and make it a really nice Hello World demo Thea application.
Okay, I forgot to mention, but just a reminder for anyone listening, the questions are open. feel free to ask a question at any point, and we'll put it to the panelists. Feel free to direct it at somebody if you want to. And we're going to keep going until the questions end or we get bored of each other. Whatever. If I need to go pick up my kids from school, this is conferences in COVID. Let's go back to Miro. Both Miro and Marc, you talked about OpenVSX. Why do you think it's so important for Thea and the community?
Yeah, I think it's basically it's a very powerful feature that is available out of the box for every Thea-based application. So it gives all these applications access to, now it's almost 1,500 high-quality extensions that can give you support for all sorts of programming languages and environments, or productivity enhancements. And so, yeah, it's an ecosystem that binds together Thea also with, or from the community aspect, also Thea with other applications like Marc also mentioned. So I think that's also a great opportunity to share a common interest, for example, between Thea and VS Code open source based projects like VS Codium.
It has another awesome feature. You can run OpenVSX on premise if you like, your own internal version that can be really useful for companies that develop extensions that are not public, for example.
Right, and that is also one direction that I'm curious about how it will evolve in the future, because yes, you're right, it is possible, but actually we haven't seen a lot of contributions addressing that so far, but I guess it is a topic that is extremely important in the industry. So I think this can change very, very quickly.
Maybe Matthew, you could say a few words about it, but one aspect as well is for security.
Absolutely.
Someone to curate the extension that their developer use.
Well, yeah, and like in large companies, people will tend to have an IT team that will handle all of the browser extensions, so that you have a common workplace for every developer, so that when there's a new person that comes in, that they are forced to use Emacs because it's the superior editor. But basically you can have your OpenVSX that's curated for certain versions of the code of plugins that have passed security checks.
Actually, I can report that some of our customers are already applying it for that purpose. And Miro, if you wonder that you didn't receive contributions, I can report it just worked perfectly. So there was no need yet to do any contribution, but there are probably some upcoming.
So there's another aspect to that I hadn't thought. If you're a product extending Thea for a specific market, maybe you don't want to open up to like every extension out there, but you do want extensibility. It gives you the chance to set up your own OpenVSX org with, again, it's like a curated set essentially. Here's the ones that are relevant for this environment.
Another dimension where the curating can happen is the license of these various extensions. If you develop during a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, no one cares, about what license are the extension you use. But if you do it for a living in a big company, they care.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about embedded. Jonas, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in the embedded space? I know you've been involved a bit.
Yeah, so in general, quite a lot involved in the embedded space. So we currently observe that a lot of the adopters of technologies like Theia or in general web-based tools are from the embedded area. I think in general, like the embedded space is known to invest a lot into tools. I think it makes sense there because having good tools in this complex domain raises efficiency. And currently, like we observe a lot of vendors like evolving their tools to the web and the cloud. There is a very interesting community evolving at Eclipse, I think. Like the core of this, I would claim, is the special interest group as part of the Eclipse Cloud Developer Workgroup. So that's a group where embedded vendors and interested parties come together and work on joint initiatives. And for example, the CDT.cloud blueprint is one of these initiatives. But there are many other technical problems that we're currently work on there as a group. So this is definitely, I would say, the hottest domain at the moment, at least for us. And we can also observe that again in our customer project. Like most companies at the moment are from the embedded space, which I think is really great for the community and the ecosystem, because apparently embedded vendors are good at two things. One is collaborating, and second, many of them are actually very strong contributors. They have been in the past to CDT, or still are for CDT and other Eclipse projects. And I expect, and you can already observe that they remain to do so for the new project, which I think is really great news for the ecosystem, because it strengthens the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that, embedded, we've seen a lot of activity, and I think Thea fits well there. You can make custom IDEs. There's a strong history of open source collaboration between the vendors. I know a common comparison topic. Marc, you did a session on it at this conference, open source Thea versus VS Code. I'm wondering if you want to elaborate or talk a bit about that, or others have comments.
Yeah, let's say the really short version is that there's a framework, and VS Code is basically a really nice editor whose source code is available for us to admire and reuse as need be under their MIT license. So it's not really a fair comparison. VS Code does not try to be a framework nor do they try to be a community of extenders like Thea does. So it's not a fair comparison, but if you want to be part of such a community, if you want to put your resources together and not have each individual effort reinvent the wheel, then I would suggest it's very good to consider going with Thea instead of just plain VS Code. Especially if you want to modify your IDE or IDE-like application. It's not necessarily an IDE.
Yeah.
So if you want
Anyone
to really
else?
customize,
Yeah, I would like to add to that, because we also deal with this question very often, and I agree to everything that Marc said. Now, to decide for your own project, if you want to provide a feature and you want to reach as many developers as you can out there, I don't know, a code analysis tool or something, then I think VS Code extensions is the way to go. But as soon as you want to build a custom tool, and that's really a different thing, then I think you will be more happy with the framework, because if you really build a custom tool, you will hit limitations in VS Code very, very early, from an organizational point of view, from an adoption point of view, and especially also from a technical point of view. And that starts with simple things like implementing custom editors, much more difficult in VS Code, adding a toolbar not possible, removing things that there is already in VS Code not possible. So I've actually observed quite a few projects starting with using VS Code as a basis for a custom tool, and then continue to fork it, which is not a really good way forward from my point of view. And I think, it's not by chance that Thea is better in this discipline. It was explicitly created for that. So it's really a purpose thing. Like, VS Code is a code editor. You can add features to it. Thea is a platform to build tools. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's easy when you come to just see, it's an IDE and it's open source or it's different, but that's a fundamental difference in what Thea was built for.
Can I ask a question to the panel on this point? So I've noticed, Tim, you called VS Code an IDE, and I noticed that Marc and Jonas called it a code editor. I find that VS Code personally, they are the gold standard of IDEs as an editor, where people will call it an IDE even though it doesn't do all the things that a classic IDE does. How do we move forward with that kind of definition? Because I think VS Code does solve 95% of the development needs of most people. It's when you get into like specific tool vendors that make specific tools that Thea really shines.
Yeah, and one aspect of that is some of these development environments that are custom are a really big investment and over a long period of time. It's not just for a few months. We're talking decades in some industries that by law you don't have a choice. You need to support your product, let's say in transport, aviation, or stuff like that. So you need really to see it as an investment, and the only way to protect that investment long term is to use open and free technologies. If there's anything proprietary in your stack, it's a weak point. Will it work 25 years from now? And will the vendor be there to provide you a version that still works, like it did in 2021?
Matthew, I'm curious how you define IDE, and what do you think that last 5% is?
Okay, well,
and this is
Go
almost off topic, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on Matthew's question again. So, I think there is no formal definition of IDE, at least not that I'm aware of. It's like integrated development environment. What does that mean? I think the reason why many people, including me, call VS Code a code editor rather than IDE is that the term IDE has some negative feelings, especially from very complex tools that we have built on the desktop. Like with a lot of features, a lot like super huge UIs with a lot of configuration and whatever. And I think one thing that VS Code really introduced to the market and really innovated on is a usability concept that hides those IDE features into something that feels like Emacs again, right? I think that was really a great innovation, and I mean, Thea happily adopted that, the quick access bar and this focus on keyboard and terminal again, which I think is really great. So to answer your question, I think it's an IDE, but I wouldn't call it IDE anymore because developers rather would like to use a code editor than an IDE, but it has almost the same, or from a feature point of view, I think it's an IDE.
Yeah, and I think VS Code is very much influenced by the JavaScript ecosystem, where command line tools are very predominant. And that's why it puts such a strong focus on command line tools and running tasks around them and configuring all that. So maybe that's also one major difference, for example, to Eclipse, where that tries to integrate everything more into its own user interface.
By the way, I think we have a couple of questions from the audience.
I was just about to jump to those. I'll just pick these out at random. Well, there's one that has an extra vote, but the middle one. What are your thoughts about moving beyond the VS Code API to offer more flexibility, extendability, like Theia extensions can, for example? I don't know who wants to take that, but are there additional API that we should provide, not just providing the VS Code extension API?
My first thought is that it might become very complex to handle that, especially on a marketplace like OpenVSX, where you have multiple clients, and then starting to differentiate between what clients can implement what subset of the whole API might get difficult to manage. And I mean, you can do everything or almost everything with the Theia API. So not relying on the VS Code API. So I wouldn't see a lot of reasons to do that, but yeah, maybe I'm missing something.
Anyone else want to comment?
Depending on the exact question, it was maybe not necessarily implied that this needed to be done in an extension, in a VS Code extension or a Thea plugin. In a sense, we already support more. You can use the VS Code API like you would in VS Code, and you can add extra things through a Thea extension that is as a much wider API available to you that lets you, for example, add custom UIs if you so wish. And We have a recent example that maybe either Jonas or Matthew might talk about a bit. It's the memory view contribution by, I think it was by Ericsson. That is a Thea extension that provides just a UI, a front-end contribution. That is a custom view that shows you the memory of the program as it runs. So that is one example where we can go beyond what you can do just with the VS Code extension, but it's, well, you need to add it on the other side. You need to add it as a Thea extension.
Okay, that's probably a good lead into the next question. This is a long one, so bear with me. I'll read it quick so you guys don't need to look down. But the question is, how do you see an ecosystem developing for Thea extensions? At the moment, maintaining a Thea extension outside of the Thea repository can be difficult. You have to make sure you keep up with new Thea releases. You have to maintain an entire demo application. That makes it difficult for maintainers, and users also have to be careful not to mix and match different Thea versions brought in by their extensions. How can things be made simpler for maintainers and adopters of extensions? And then follow on, especially contributions that could be downloaded and run without having to recompile and relaunch. So that was a mouthful. Who wants to take a stab at that? Oh, Marc? We lost.
Marc, you're muted.
Double muted?
Oh, can you hear
There
me
you
now?
go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, of course, it's desirable to be able to add functionality without having to rebuild your application, and it would be nice from that point of view to have a wider API that is usable in something like a VS Code extension. But yeah, I think one way to simplify this a little bit going forward, yes, you will have to keep up with the upstream framework or the rest of the framework, the Thea framework, and update frequently. But I think going forward, maybe not every extension will need a demo application, an example application. I'm hoping that we can maybe establish a pattern of reusing Blueprint for that. Maybe as a sub-module or something like that, so that it's not necessary to maintain your own application for that all the time. And I think there's extra tools that we could add to help maintain Thea extensions, because yeah, it is not an easy task. That's true, and we know we do it for several.
I would actually like to add to that, so because the beginning of the question was also like, how do you see an ecosystem of Thea extension starting to develop? Actually, I currently see that kicking off. So I'm aware of quite a few generic features implemented in the Thea extension that are currently looking for a place to live. So I agree with Marc. Blueprint could hopefully be a common example, or sorry, yeah, example application to test drive those. What I would like to invite you, if you have a generic Thea extension that is potentially reusable by other projects, introduce it to us, like us in terms of the project. Maybe join the developer call, do a quick demo, and tell us about your use case. Because the more use cases we know, especially for those extension or like generic extensions that might be interesting for others, the better we can actually design the correct place to host those. Because I think so. As just mentioned, I'm currently aware of several projects coming up in that area that may be not part of the core repository, but maybe in some additional repository, I don't know. So we will likely develop some sort of solution for that soon. And as more extensions we are aware of, the better we can plan for that.
So do we end up with a VS Code set of extensions, OpenVSX, and a separate set of Thea extensions that are tighter to the platform?
I mean, that's essentially what we already have today, right? I mean, there are many extensions already in the core project, and I mean, they are delivered by the project, but by far not every product picks them all up. However, I think I would claim that some extensions are like not common enough to live in the core framework anymore, in the core platform, and maybe it even gets too crowded there. So maybe we have to create another place. But this is early thoughts on this issue, actually. But yes, that would actually mean that. So OpenVSX as a place for VS Code extensions, core repository for core features, and then maybe a second place for more exotic features or things that are less common.
Okay. Any more comments on that? Okay. So there's one more question currently. What other domains do you see Thea excelling in? E.g., following on from John's talk today, might data science be a use case to go deeper on? And I was thinking about this earlier when we talked about, embedded being a very strongly aligned, domain. Are there other domains where, the people working there are generally good at collaboration and working together, but need to build, custom tools or custom IDEs?
Well, I would say every company and industry sector that has been using the Eclipse-rich client platform in the past would be a very good fit for switching to Thea in case they want to build on the web platform and maybe gradually switch from desktop to a cloud application over time. So, and that's every domain, or a lot of domains at least that I've seen. I've seen companies from the financial sector and hardware production, all sorts of services and insurances. So there are a lot of sectors that need custom tools to describe their domain-specific models, their domain-specific data, handle it, give some tools to their experts to process something, and so everything that could be done earlier with Eclipse platform can also be done with Thea.
Yeah, I think even if they're not interested in the going to the web necessarily, it's the modern platform and the hosted VSX extensions. Sorry, Marc.
Another one that has not been mentioned so far is educational. So several universities seem to be using Thea in various aspects. I've heard some of them use them even during exams to give some practical problems to their students, like programming exercises that they need to resolve in the IDE itself, in the Thea-based IDE. So there's I think a lot of innovation that happens in universities, and they love open source, of course.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments on that one? Okay, so a reminder, everyone, just hit the Ask a Question button. If you have any more questions, I see there's a bit of chat. I'll try and scan through that, but if any of those are questions, please enter them on the left. In the meantime, we've talked about a lot about Thea as a framework. Are there any other things that we can do to double down on that, to help promote Thea as a platform for building things on? I think Blueprint was a great example of that. Anything else we should be looking at?
Yes, I want to take the opportunity, because quite a few people are listening. The best marketing for us as a platform, I mean, we try to market the platform and write documentation and so on. But you, as potential adopters in this call, you can help us with talking about your use case, putting your tool on the website, putting you as an adopter on the website, because that's the best proof that the platform works. We are actually aware, I mean, there are quite a lot of examples and companies already on the website, but we are aware that there's a huge group of people that are not officially on the website listed. We sometimes are in contact with them. So just consider to add yourself there. That helps the project. And we're really happy to invite you to be there officially listed. Sorry for the marketing, but I wanted to take the opportunity.
I'm going to ask you a question about the marketing. Why would they want to join Thea? I'll give my answer. Thea is the main open source solution where you know that if you're contributing to the project, if you're a committer, it's meritocracy, people are not going to go, yeah, well, you work at EclipseSource. I don't really care about you because you didn't contribute this year. If you did the work, you have your stake on where the future of the project is going. So, we're all contributing, and we all are working towards what we think is the best possible solution for our problems. Now, if you have problems that are slightly different and you want to join in, this is a great way to have your voice heard. And, this is, for me, the absolute beauty of open source, that we get to make the world a better place together.
And let me mention, Matthew, when we say open source like this, it can mean many things, right? A repo on GitHub with an MIT license can be considered open source, but we have more than that. We have a lot more than that. Like you say, what we have, because we are an Eclipse Foundation project, we follow the rules, and we have it's merit that is the main criteria to progress in the project, become a committer, and have a say in the direction of the project. This collaborative governance means that no one is able to take their balls and go play home alone. No one can dictate where the project will go technically. The foundation is there to help us, and there are many rules that are there for the good of the project. But the technical aspect, where the project goes technically, is in the hands of the committers, and that's it. No one controls the whole thing. It's collaborative. So this way you can ensure that it will always go in the direction that the majority wants it to go. Majority of the people that have a real stake, that are there every day.
Also, you can argue a case with us on that front. Like, you can convince...
Maybe not with Matthew, but with the
other... No, I'm a jerk. That's fine.
That is true. If you take a random repo on GitHub, it's there, and maybe you can use it if the license permits, but it does not guarantee you any more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had, I think like almost monthly, I get into a conversation where I have to say, do you mean open source or open community? Lots of people say open source, and they don't clarify which one of the two they're actually talking about. And there is a big fundamental difference. Yeah.
So many people will use FOSS, free open source software. So the free aspect, I think, is maybe a bit more telling, but it can mean a lot of things still.
Yeah, just because it's free or an open license still doesn't mean everyone's welcome at the table.
Correct. And even if it's very open and nice this year, what will it look like in 5 years when the company maybe that is behind it has changed course or values, or 10 years or 25 or more? There's no way to tell, right?
So I think we've drifted away from the question, but are there other things we should do to help make Thea a better framework, better tool to build on?
One thing that came to my mind was a question by Thomas that I saw on Twitter about whether we should make it easier to build applications with Thea that are not IDEs. And I think that has a lot to do with what we have seen in Thomas' presentation today. So the shape of the application front end, which is currently built by the application shell component. Of course, you can already customize and override everything in Thea, but the question is, are there use cases to reshape this application shell in a specific way? And so, yeah, I would double what Jonas already said. Get in touch with the project leads and tell your story and your use cases. I think it would be interesting to see whether we should make specific points of that API easier customizable, so that we can pave the way for certain frequent use cases.
Maybe there's also, so from my point of view, there's also work to be done on a governance and organizational level. I mean, we must not forget Thea is actually really young. Like, it has been incepted like in 2017 or published first version. And I think from my point of view, Thea is currently in the transition from a startup, if you want to call it like that, to really a cash cow or like a long-term endeavor. And the more adopters come in, the more we learn as a project how we have to organize our processes, our releases, our documentation, and everything in a way that we make the life of adopters as easy as possible and as convenient as possible. And for example, migration guide is one example, but also many other things like how we document changes, what documentation we provide, how we organize meetings, even something like TheaCon that we do today. All those things that, for example, Eclipse Desktop has built up over 20 years. I expect, and I think there's a lot still to improve, but I think we're on a very good way there to really become a long-running and good project to be adopted.
Okay. There's no more questions online, so last chance for anyone online who wants to ask a question. I have one more, but before we get to that, are there any things that do you guys want to jump back to? Okay, then it's Oracle time. What do each of you think is going to be important over the next year? Where do you think Thea is going to go, or what are you going to dive into working on? And let's go in the backwards order on my screen. Marc.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can see that the cloud is getting more and more traction. I can see as well, and I'm very happy to see that the whole embedded ecosystem is taking a keen interest in Thea now. And it would be nice if it were all languages and use cases, but I think embedded is an amazing one, and we can use it to push the Thea framework forward. So looking forward to that.
Okay, Miro.
Yeah, I would comment from the adoption perspective, and I would say the most important topic I see is consistency and consolidation of tool chains in that context, because the era of cloud IDEs is relatively new. And so in the industrial applications that are adopting it, I see a lot of mixing of different parts inside their tool chain. For example, a business logic and models implemented in Java, but then also large parts of the tooling implemented in TypeScript in the context of a Thea application, for example. And that is perfectly valid for a transition period. So for migrating from earlier solutions to a web-based platform. But I think in the long run, it will be important to work towards a more homogeneous code base. I think for maintainability, that's an important aspect. In the long run, it will not be easy to find a lot of engineers who are really proficient in all these technology stacks. So it's much easier to focus on one. And so, yeah, for that reason, we are at TypeFox also investing quite a lot into making it possible, into filling some technology gaps and making it possible, especially to fill these gaps on the Node.js platform, which we see currently as the most important one because it's the same platform used in VS Code extensions in the backend and also in the Thea backend. And so, yeah, like for example, I'm currently working on a Sprotty Node.js support that will enable creating diagrams in a Node.js backend, for example, in a Thea extension.
Okay, Matthew.
Okay, well, for 2022, I would very much like to give Marc a high five in person. Like, seeing people in person, that's my personal oracle of what I wanted to see done. But this is an opportunity. We're finding new ways to collaborate, and we are looking into ways to collaborate over cloud, basically like having maybe a together or like team screen share over Thea and stuff like that. One feature that would be pretty nice, especially with our embedded friends, but also I've seen certain internal use cases for this in HPC also, is detachable windows, so that because you don't just have your code and your stuff. With more complex tools, you have many other views that are very important, be they the ways to connect to your terminals or control other systems or debuggers. So yeah, this is something that could work very well for both for telecom, high performance compute, and embedded. Now, I'd like to make a prediction for 10 years from now, though, on the way that we're detaching the front end from the back end. Now, this has to do with my background and Marc's background. I want to go more green. We have, right now, let's say you have to recompile Chromium or the Linux kernel or something. It'll take you about 20 minutes on your computer. And I'm predicting that it's going to get worse before it gets better due to the NP-complete problem, the nature of compilation. So, because of that, my prediction is that we're going to be moving the compilation to a distributed cloud solution, like a make J minus 4096 instead of J minus 6. And that this distribution will happen where it gets dispatched to areas that have greener energy to offset carbon tax and whatnot, to make the compilation cleaner. That's my personal hope of web-based IDs going in that direction.
Yeah, you've taken a leap beyond.
I told you, that's not for tomorrow, but I'm expecting it to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting, and probably like a whole panel on its own. We've been talking about offloading work and being able to have lighter laptops for many years.
Well, Thea is Edge's best friend. Not the U2 guitarist, but Edge Compute. Because you can offload all the heavy lifting to a big computer somewhere else. You could pretty much have it running on a tablet the way it's designed. But tablets are getting pretty strong now, so that's a bad example.
Yeah, I think my latest iPad might have more compute power than my laptop. Yeah, that might be a great topic to go into more detail next time. And are we finally on the cusp of that? Because not just, before you even get to where you run it and make that greener, but just having, one big machine somewhere that does the heavy lifting of 50 of us. Yeah, it's an interesting topic. And last but not least, Jonas.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. After the last point you raised, everything else sounds stupid. I think that's a really, really interesting topic. Maybe down to earth again. So I expect two developments to happen soon. One is more complex tools hit a platform like Thea, and by more complex I mean not only source code but also complex UIs, modeling tools, engineering tools, domain-specific tools, the use cases that Miro described before. I see that coming. And the other thing which I expect to see and maybe even hope to see is that that from a usability point of view, we also make the next innovation steps. Because I kind of agree to what Matthew said before, that currently VS Code is considered to be the gold standard of IDEs or code editors. Well, I don't think it's the final state, right? I think that we can even innovate on that. And I think there's some peak example like the new Arduino IDE that I recently used a lot, which I think really has a nice usability concept. And also the new ARM products that are available in the public have some innovative ideas. So I hope that more people use the flexibility and power that you have in Thea to innovate on the UI again. And also like smaller pieces, like for example the memory view or the new trace compass versions. I think we can move forward there. We don't always have to stick to exactly what VS Code does. Let's use the stack we have to do something even better.
Yeah, one part of VS Code that I hate really is the Git integration. I don't like that view.
But the whole menu part.
The Git integration is great. You open the terminal and type Git, and
I'll admit I use a separate tool that's called fork. And if you can imagine trying to find a tool called git fork, It's
That's a great one. Yeah.
it's
Really-
about
really
15
recommend
results
that.
down. Yeah. Any other comments from you guys? Anything you want that's on your mind?
Well, really happy that our first TheaCon is over. I think it went pretty well. Very interesting presentations, and I don't know what you guys thought, but I think job well done.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. Well, if we're wrapping it up then, just a reminder to everyone, there is a survey. Please help us, evolve this and make it even better next time. There's a link at the bottom of the screen. All of the sessions are going to be posted online, and an email will be sent out in case you missed anything. And you can always go back and view that later, or if you saw a great one, share it with your team. And of course, we always have the Slack channel. So feel free to join there to talk about the conference, or just jump onto the Theia channel. And with that, thank you very much, guys. It's been fun chatting with you. Again, congratulations to a successful TheaCon, and hopefully we'll see you next time with at least some physical component where we can now go out for a beer. Have a good afternoon, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.